Okay, so I want to start by telling you the conclusions that I hope to convince you of as we move through our discussion today. And then we'll go back and I'll show you the data that would support these conclusions. So first, I think our data show that adolescence and adulthood are times of improved functioning for those with an autism spectrum disorder as compared to the early childhood years. And I think we have data to show that the family environment is associated with these improvements and can take credit for the improvements in symptoms and behavior problems during adolescence and adulthood. I'll also show you why there's a need for lifelong family support services, and in some states, and I don't know about California, family support is really focused on the childhood years and not so much during the adult years. And then it's very important to think about what as advocates we can strive for, and I hope that as advocates we can strive for making available treatments for behavior problems throughout adulthood, because this is the single biggest problem that individuals on the spectrum face during adulthood is behavior problems, much more so than the autism symptoms per se. I think we need advocacy for improved clinical services and social services to maintain activities of daily living in adulthood. We need interventions and supports for helping families remain adaptable and warm, and also we need treatments for families and services for families to maintain their psychological well-being, because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And these are the areas where adult services are lagging behind the needs. So I'd like to start out by telling you a little bit about a woman named Teresa. And Teresa is an example of what Dr. Joe Piven, who's at the University of North Carolina, said back in 1996, which is that autism is a lifelong disorder whose features change with development. So this is how Teresa's mother described her when she was age 4 or 5. Constant flapping, spinning, constant motion, running out of the house, severe tantrums. If anything was moved or touched, she threw things. She smeared toothpaste on mirrors. She didn't play with toys. She looked through them. She had some useless speech, almost no social interaction. She did have some interaction with her siblings, but she left the room when other people came into the house. And this is how her mother described her currently at the age of 46. She went from almost nonverbal to a complete, understandable, appropriate range of communication. She most generally lives in the here and now, this world. Before, she was rarely in this world. And she's aware of what goes on in the whole world because she reads so many things. She no longer pulls away from people, and she doesn't leave the room. She makes you feel that she wants to be there and wants to be friendly. Now she's more at ease. Not like you or I, but she wants to be there. And this is a remarkable journey. And some people ask me what sustains our interest in adolescence and adulthood during this past more than a decade. And understanding how you go from point A to point B, it's a very big task, and it's a very important task. So that is really, Teresa is just one example of these trajectories that we are trying to measure. She moved to an apartment when she was 28. She moved from her family home to an apartment. Her family visits her frequently, or she goes home. She lives alone with staff support coming in on a part-time basis. She has 2 supported employment positions. In other words, these are not positions, jobs in the open market, but she has some staff support, minimal. Each is a 10-hour-a-week job, so she's working about 20 hours a week in total. She's had one friend since preschool, and they're still friends. And this friend also has a developmental disability diagnosis, not autism. But she has significant health problems. She has diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, anxiety disorder, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. So this is a bit of a mixed picture, but I think it's also a positive picture. And when I say that on average, we see people improving from childhood through adolescence to adulthood, Teresa's example is one that characterizes that improvement. So now let me move to the family's role in achieving positive outcomes. And I want to talk about family adaptability and maternal warmth and criticism, and then social support. And I think about the world that an individual with an autism diagnosis lives in, and there is this adult in the center of the circle, in the center of our universe, really, and surrounding the adult is the nuclear family, whether or not the adult is still living at home. And surrounding the nuclear family is the family's social support network, which includes the grandparents. And then surrounding the informal supports, the social supports, are the formal service system. And I think that what we need is all of these circles of support to work toward a high quality of life for individuals on the spectrum during adulthood. And we have a ways to go. So I think one of the great powers of the Grandparent Autism Network is the fact that you're taking us in the direction in which this field needs to move. And I think together, through advocacy and continued research, hopefully we will get there. So let me start with family adaptability. And I'm going to be reporting some studies that have been conducted in collaboration with a number of colleagues and postdocs who were with me or still are with us at the University of Wisconsin. And this first study of family adaptability was led by Dr. Jason Baker, who's sitting here, and he's now on the faculty of Cal State Fullerton. And it's really nice to see you, Jason. So this is his work that he did when he was spent a couple of years in Wisconsin as a postdoctoral fellow after receiving his PhD. So by family adaptability, we mean the ability of a family to change in the face of situational or developmental stress. And that translates into the ability to generate new solutions to problems, to compromise, to shift roles and responsibilities, to discipline fairly, and to have clear rules. And these are values and behaviors that we can all endorse. And so we used an adapted version of a commonly used measure, the FACES, to measure family adaptability. And this is a measure that asks about how the family functions in general, not specifically linked to the son or daughter with the autism diagnosis. And the data that I'm reporting on come from the mothers. So the question we asked for this paper, which was published in the Journal of Family Psychology, is does the family adaptability at the beginning of the study, at time 1, predict the son or daughter's behavior problems at time 3, which is 36 months later? And so we selected 149 families for this analysis from our overall sample of 406 families. And these were families where the son or daughter with the autism diagnosis was under age 22 at the time 3 period and who continued to live at home with the family. And on average, at the beginning of the study, this subsample started out as age 15, and then by 3 years later, they were age 18. And about 86% of the mothers were married of this 149 families in this study. So it gives you a picture of the subgroup that we're focusing on here in this question about family adaptability. And this slide shows you the structure of our data analysis. And I have some data to share with you today. And for those of you who are statistically minded, you'll appreciate it. And for those of you who are not so much, I'll try to talk you through it. So the main question we're asking here is whether family adaptability can predict changes in behavior problems in the son or daughter over this 3-year period. And we're also secondarily asking whether family adaptability predicts changes in mother's level of depressive symptoms. And this is what we see, is that we found that family adaptability predicted declining behavior problems over the 3-year period. High levels of family adaptability were associated with lower levels of behavior problems over that period of time. And we also saw that family adaptability was independently associated with declines in the mother's level of depressive symptoms. So, in other words, high levels of family adaptability predict lower levels, declining levels of behavior problems and maternal depression over this 3-year period. So adolescents who come from highly adaptable families and mothers in highly adaptable families have improving well-being during this 3-year period. So what that tells us, and I think this is an important finding as we think about creating adult services for adolescent and adult services for individuals on the spectrum, is that when we think about family support, we should be thinking about adaptability. Family adaptability should be a target of family intervention because we see that it has sustained positive effects for multiple family members. We measured the effects for the son or daughter on the spectrum and for the mother, but I'm certain it also has positive effects for the other siblings in the family and for the fathers as well. Adaptability is an important family characteristic that can promote optimal adolescent and adult development. So when we think about developing interventions, we should be thinking about how to build family problem-solving skills, co-parenting, compromise. And we know that these are easy things to endorse and difficult things to follow through on, especially when the son or daughter has challenging behaviors. So we can't put this all on the family. We have to also advocate for providing direct treatment for behavior problems and for parental depression through this period of life. The goal of our research is not to say the family has to be the only source of change, but should be recognized. We should all recognize that there can be family-driven positive change to complement what formal services should be providing. So moving from family adaptability to family warmth and criticism. And family warmth within the field of autism is sort of a loaded concept, because Dr. Lee O'Connor talked about refrigerator mothers, saying that these were not warm mothers, and that's the cause of the autism. And so, you know, the idea of measuring the family environment was one of those decisions that we had to make. What, you know, was this a wise thing to do? Was this a, you know, because it's sort of bordering on quicksand within this field. But we stepped back and we said, you know, hundreds, thousands of studies have been published about the power of the family environment for typically developing children. And why not try to understand the power of the family environment for families who have a son or daughter on the spectrum? This is an area that, before our study and some others, was not really fully explored for the reasons I've said, and it certainly wasn't, the power of the family environment was not explored during adolescence and adulthood. So we drew upon a body of research, a research tradition called expressed emotion that has been found to be productive in other fields, not in autism. And expressed emotion is a measure of the emotional quality of the family environment. And in other studies, it's been shown to be predictive of improvement in symptoms in diagnoses as diverse as the ones on the screen: asthma, diabetes, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, other types of developmental disabilities. But at the time when we began our research, it had not been studied in autism. So we thought it would be important to take a look at this, to do some systematic evaluation of this concept within the field of autism. And also we were motivated because there have been interventions developed and tested through experimental clinical trials, and they have shown that expressed emotion is amenable to change in multi-family group interventions. So we thought it would be valuable to determine whether this would be helpful in modulating symptoms of autism during adolescence and adulthood, just like it has for these other diagnoses. So this is how we measure expressed emotion. This is how it's measured in a standardized way. It's called the 5-minute speech sample, and we collect this data from mothers in our study, but it can be collected from any family member, and we say, I'd like to hear your thoughts and feelings about your son or daughter in your own words and without my interrupting with any questions or comments. When I ask you to begin, I'd like you to speak for 5 minutes, telling me what kind of person he or she is and how the two of you get along together. After you begin to speak, I prefer not to answer any questions until the 5 minutes are over. And we start every one of our multiple interviews with this request for 5 minutes of narrative about the son or daughter. And families like sharing this information, and we like hearing it because it's actually been very valuable for coding various dimensions of the family environment as described in these narratives. And the two that I'm going to tell you about today are warmth and criticism. Warmth is measured by a warm tone of voice, expressions of interest in the son or daughter, expressions of sympathy, concern, and empathy. And criticism is sort of the flip side of that. It's negative or critical characterizations of the son or daughter, description of the relationship in primarily negative or critical terms. So that's what I mean by warmth and criticism as extracted from these narratives. And we take these narratives and we bundle them up from Wisconsin and send them to California, to UCLA, where there's an individual who does, this is what she does for a living. She codes expressed emotion narratives. And she's blind to the condition of the son or daughter. We're sending her narratives from mothers who have other children with other diagnoses, so she doesn't know that these are children who have autism. And from a statistical point of view, we've shown that there's she does a reliable job of doing the ratings from these narratives.